Hello, my name is Ixeeya Lin. It's such a joy to be here by Jordan's invitation, creating this beautiful group for us to come together, to learn about each other. So I'm honored. My name is Ixeeya Lin. I've been working in women's feminine spirituality and the path of direct revelation through the creative process of ritual, dance, art, of women coming together and really becoming the answer to each other's prayers, really. So what do? I do lots of things, as we all do as women, because we're multifaceted, trying to squeeze ourselves into this one pointed focus of a world we live in, and these business practices of niching down. Is that hard for anybody else? Well, there's some ideas and tips I've learned along the way. Maybe we can talk about it. But for now, I want to tell you about the way of the womb. That's been the most profound work that has really been the umbrella of so many of my practices that I share with women and really support women in coming home to their bodies, understanding how their feminine body works, their sacred power, that's that feminine spirit, and what femininity is to them, and to really understanding, and from that place of deep knowing of themselves, of finding their sacred mission. So we do rituals. I do women's healings, and then that's a Maya spiritual healing shamanic body work that is focused on the womb center, centering the womb physically and also spiritually, to help a woman reconnect with the spiritual center of her body. And I also do shamanic practices where I support people in learning the shamanic practices, which is a practice. It's a creative practice of direct revelation, your connection to spirit and spirit guides. And that feels really important for these times to me, that we all are supported in understanding the difference between the ego mind talking and spiritual guidance, and tapping into the unseen world for guidance and the deep intelligence of our bodies and our womb wisdom to work with. And this kind of interconnectivity in meditation for women is this fullness. The masculine meditation is working with the emptying, and that's a beautiful stepping stone. But for women's bodies, there usually leaves us with some kind of longing, because the feminine spiritual practice is resting in to the fullness and the interconnectivity with all of life. So that's a lot of what I help women find in their lives. And we practice it together. I call it feminine sacred practice, embodied feminine practice. And ritual's a big one. How do we use our bodies and use ritual activity to really create this new ways of being, and to remember, to emphasize remembering what serves us, right? Because it's so easy to remember the trauma because it gets locked in the body. So we want to unwind the trauma and recall the goodness and what is empowering. And that's a process. I do workshops, trainings, where people come to me or I go to them, or we do the online work or an online coaching series, which we can do anywhere. And that's real exciting. Writing a couple books. They're almost ready. And I do guest speaking, and this is all very, very fun for me. It's my mission to restore the feminine. So how did I get into this? I believe Jordan would like us to share that. Really, where I've landed today at 47 years old is a result of my life being dedicated to something right from the beginning. And that something was, back when I didn't know what to call it, was this sense of God force, was this sense of sacredness. in a childhood that was a bit chaotic and some abusiveness, I found refuge in my Catholic upbringing and going to church. And I was a bit of an oddball. That wasn't usual. I was making play and dances and all of these things with this idea of this sacredness in between the dimensions. And my twin sister and I would make these dances and play heaven and angels, and it was potent. And I played with my baby dolls and mothered. Now, at the other side of my life, was that it was training me for these things that I do. And along the way, I've had many rites of passage that I have learned from, that life has given me, brain injuries and my own personal story around attack and rape and these things that, if we allow them to be, they can be rites of passages. Now, I certainly hope we don't have to go through trauma to have rites of passage. But trauma can be a rite of passage because we can draw on the power and the lessons it brings us in the healing process. And that's a big piece of my work with women. So how did I get here? My own journey of healing and love of the divine, of sacredness, of my own body, and realizing it is sacred. This is a beautiful temple. And so this led me to practices in dance. I went to college for art, and I also studied religion and dance and psychology in college. I was fascinated with the human experience of embodying this sacredness and this personal growth process around becoming awakened to consciousness. And so college was a big stepping stone for me, creating art that was healing and trans-dimensional. And that's where I started to really understand that there was something different about being a woman. That being a woman was a different journey. And that's really where my love of women's culture and interest in the women's journey, because up until that point, I started realizing that, every perspective I've ever had on everything is through the male lens. All the authors and teachers and books and things were all from a masculine lens, the history I was taught. And so I remember my college friend and studio mate, she was very into feminism, and we started researching all the women artists and their journey in a very masculine world. And so there it began. And through my 20s, I discovered somatic healing to heal some of the wounding from my abuse, and how to empower through that. I started studying yoga in college, and everything kept pointing back to this lens that was my my tunnel vision of spirituality, being a woman, and this creative embodied process of dance and art. And I started to learn that these were the ancient spiritual ways to dance and drum and make art were considered medicine. The bottom line is, I arrived here from constantly being curious and taking the next step and listening to my heart. And so just quickly I'll share, the somatic healing led into shamanic dance practices and healing, which led into a deeper dive into women's yoga and the womb. I did a priestess training for 3 years, and that's what led to the touring with the Gypsy Rock Band. So I was the ceremonial dancer there and teacher, and we went to Guatemala and I met some teachers, and so I kept on this journey. I was invited to bring sacred dance to Guatemala, which was a great honor, for 2012. Then started to create practices for women to help women ground this quickening energy into their bodies, into embodiment on earth for 2012. And I say we because there was just many of us doing it at the time with these sacred symbols, the sacred symbol map that we've created that we can teach you. So I was influenced by shamanism after my after my priestess training, I did go into a long apprenticeship with shamanism, about 10 years, and with several different shamanic practitioners that led me to the Maya spiritual healing, shamanic body work, the womb work. It led me to Belize to work with some medicine women and many teachers, which also led me to holistic pelvic care. It helps us really stabilize our pelvic floor, and this is a really big issue for women's health as we age. So this is the journey I've been on, and then all along, dance has been this base. I am a practitioner of the South Indian temple dance tradition, belly dance, tribal belly dance, flamenco, African dance. So many dance forms that informed. So when you embody this way a certain culture moves, the way other women move, we understand something about their intelligence. And womb dance, the program I've created, it's called Women Opening Through Movement and Breath. It's a culmination of the teachings of many of the global women's practices, which were rooted in movement and ritual. Ritual and dance were usually combined. They were never separated in a women's culture. We danced our grief. We danced to prepare for our babies. We danced welcoming into new life cycles. So this is my journey. This is how I unfolded into who I am now. It's been a glorious journey, and it's been hard at times, and I've had shame and doubt that I've had to overcome, and everything I've experienced as a woman, I realize is something I get to actually help other women with. And that's how it is to be a woman. You know, we sit together, we dance together, we share our stories. A real core belief for me is that our stories, our experiences as women, truly is our path to our divinity. How we tell our stories, how we find our way to the healing of the stories. And that's why I'm coming to you from outside, because one of my greatest teachers of this mythical human life, where I get to really nourish and become aware of the power of my life story, is the earth, her seasons, her cycles. This is where I do my dance. This is where I often do my rituals. This is where I come when I want to write a program, and she just gives me the downloads. The feminine spiritual practice is about the interconnectivity with all things. It's about getting deep into the fullness, that wild divinity, that wild divine feminine. I'm really excited to be here with you for the week. I'm going to be sharing some things along the way, and you're welcome to find out more about me on womenstent.org. And please, if you have any questions or comments or anything you want to share, comments below, and we'll just start this conversation. Mwah. Bye for now.